when you talk about how you improve these weaknesses, a mistake that I'll give you a fourth bonus mistake that we see is that a lot of people, they'll just tell the interviewer that they've been working on this weakness, but they're not showing the interviewer how they've been working on this weakness. Okay, so we always tell our clients, show, don't tell. Hey guys, if you like the content on this episode today, I want you to go and click the subscribe button because we're putting out content like this multiple times a week, which is going to help you get into the top investment banks out there. I want to make sure that you don't miss any of it, okay? Today, I want to talk about the 3 biggest mistakes that we see when people try to answer weakness questions, okay? Weakness questions are when the investment banker asks you to tell them about one of your weaknesses, or maybe tell them about several of your greatest weaknesses. We've seen people ask for as many as up to 3 in a single interview, right? So typically we ask our clients to prepare for at least 3 weaknesses that they can talk about, okay? Now, this is a tricky question because a lot of people, when they're asked about what their greatest weaknesses are, they're afraid to give an actual weakness, right? Because it's like, I'm interviewing, I'm trying to get a job. Why would I want you to know about my weaknesses, right? But that actually is the first mistake that I want to talk about, which is that a lot of people will try to dress up one of their strengths as a weakness, okay? So they'll say things like, oh, I'm just such a perfectionist, or, oh, I work too hard sometimes, like I take on too much work, right? Those are not real weaknesses, okay? Like, you have to understand that when the bankers are asking you this question, it's not meant to be some trick question to see if you actually have a weakness, and if you have a weakness, then they're not going to hire you. The reality is everybody's got weaknesses. They know that you have a weakness. They have weaknesses themselves. Nobody's perfect. We're all human, right? This question is more asking if you have the self-awareness to know what your weaknesses are. Because if you know what your weaknesses are, then you can actually work on them. But if you don't know what your weaknesses are, then you're probably not the type of person who's going to get better over time, right? And so do not fall into the trap, which is a very newbie mistake that I see way too often, which is do not try to use a strength or a non-weakness or a fake weakness as one of your weaknesses, okay? So that's number one. The second mistake that I see a lot is giving a detrimental weakness for the job that you're interviewing for. So, for example, if you're interviewing for investment banking and they ask you, hey, what's your greatest weakness? You don't want to say things like, I'm not very analytical, or, oh, I'm not really good with numbers, or I got a bad grade in my finance class, or, sometimes I feel just like kind of lazy, or I procrastinate a lot, or I have poor time management skills. I mean, there's so many things you could say that would just automatically disqualify you from this job, because all the examples that I just gave, those are like the opposite of some very important qualities that bankers look for in their junior hires, right? Like, if you're lazy or if you don't have a good work ethic, like, you're probably not cut out for investment banking, right? If you're bad at managing your time, probably not cut out for investment banking, because you're going to have to juggle a lot of different competing deadlines constantly when you're in banking, right? If you're not analytical, or if you're not good with numbers, probably not going to be very good at building financial models. You're not going to be good at your job, right? So you don't want to pick a weakness. Like, you don't want to be overly honest, even if those are your real weaknesses. You don't want to use weaknesses like that. So this is almost kind of like the opposite of the first mistake that I talked about. The first one is like being fake about it and talking about fake weaknesses. This one is being overly honest with your weaknesses and sharing weaknesses that are actually going to basically prevent you from getting this job completely. Okay, so that's the second mistake that we see a lot. And then the third one is maybe you pick an okay weakness, or you pick an acceptable weakness, but you're not demonstrating how you've improved, right? Because the most important part of these weakness questions is not just telling them where your weakness is. Like, sometimes we see people like, oh, they just answer literally the question that's being asked and nothing else. Oh, well, my weakness is sometimes I'm bad with the little, I'm bad with like attention to detail. right? Like I'm more of a big picture guy. I miss a smaller, nuanced stuff. And then it stopped there. And there's no follow-up, there's no explanation to okay, and then the so what, right? Like the more important part of the answer is not like the actual weakness itself. The more important part that they're looking for is how did you actually fix that weakness, or how have you been working on that weakness? Even if it's not completely fixed yet, you want to be able to have an example prepared where you've actually done certain things to work on that weakness, right? So for example, one of my weaknesses was that I'm not, at least previously, I'm a lot better at this now, but previously, one of my weaknesses was that I'm not very good at communicating, or I'm not very good at the way I speak and express myself in a work setting, right? A lot of that has to do with body language and tonality and the inflection in your voice and things like that. And so I used to not be very good at that. And I got a lot of feedback from my managers and from my bosses who told me that, hey, the way you communicate and the way you express yourself comes across as if you are kind of nonchalant and as if like you don't really care. And it's just like low energy, kind of monotone. And so even though I cared a lot about my job, it wasn't coming across the right way. Right. And that was affecting people's perception of me at work, which perception becomes reality. Right. And also if people perceive me that way, it prevents me from being able to be effective at work because I'm not as persuasive. I'm not able to influence other people around me. Right. I'm not able to kind of like convince people of my point of view. So what did I do about it? Well, I went out and actually hired a speech coach. Right. So once a week, I went and took this one-on-one lesson with a speech coach who coached me on things like, the inflection of my voice and the tonality and how to not sound so monotone and, how to make sure that I end my sentences on a downward tonality as opposed to an upward tonality, which, gives me more authority and more confidence and makes me more credible. So that would be like a very concrete example of something that I did to work on this weakness, right? So I'm just giving you this example so that you can go and think about what have you done to actually work on your weaknesses. And by the way, like when you talk about how you improve these weaknesses, a mistake that I'll give you a fourth bonus mistake that we see is that a lot of people, they'll just tell the interviewer that they've been working on this weakness, but they're not showing the interviewer how they've been working on this weakness. Okay, so we always tell our clients, show, don't tell. Right? What does show, don't tell mean? Like instead of like going back to the example that I just used, I could have said, and ever since I realized that the way I communicate is very ineffective, I've been working really hard on becoming a better communicator. And since then, I've become a much better communicator. Okay, what did I just do there? I just told you that this is something that I've worked very hard on. But you still have no idea, like, well, how exactly did I work hard on this? Because I didn't show you how I worked on it, right? By giving you an actual example earlier about how I went and worked with a coach one-on-one once a week for 60 minutes a week, and these are the things that we worked on, blah, 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 that actually showed you what I did to work on this weakness as opposed to just telling you that I worked on this weakness, right? Because anyone can just tell you something, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean it's believable, right? Like they can say whatever they want. How do I know you actually worked on it? If you actually show me by giving me concrete examples of how you've worked on this, then it's going to be a lot more credible in terms of what you've actually done, right? So anyway, those are the main mistakes that I see all the time that I want you to keep in mind as you think about how to answer this weakness question, okay? It can be a tricky question, and most people don't get this right. However, if you keep these common mistakes in mind and you avoid these mistakes, then you're going to be better off than probably 90% of people out there already when it comes to this question. And then this question will actually become an advantageous question for you because you're going to be one of the few people that can actually answer this correctly. Okay? So hopefully that helps you guys. And that'll be it for today. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're looking for more customized advice that's tailored for your specific situation, then I invite you to book a free strategy session with our team at the link below. We'll talk to you soon.